The Communist Manifesto. Karl Marx, from 1818 to 1883, was a German philosopher, economist, and sociologist who became the most influential thinker of modern times. He grew up in a middle-class family in Trier, Russia. His ancestry was Jewish, but his family was largely non-religious, inspired by the ideas of Enlightenment philosophers Immanuel Kant and Voltaire. In 1813, he went to the University of Bonn to study philosophy and literature, and it was here that he first became involved in radical politics. Marx became fascinated with the ideas of German philosopher G.W.F. Hegel and soon began writing his own work. He moved across Europe, living in Berlin, Cologne, Paris, Brussels, and eventually London. While in Cologne, Marx met Friedrich Engels, 1820 to 1895, another sociology-minded German philosopher. Engels was the son of a textile manufacturer who never finished high school, but like Marx, was greatly influenced by Hegel's writings. When he arrived in England, Engels was shocked by the living conditions of industrial workers in 1845. He published The Condition of Working Class in England. Both men became increasingly convinced that the solutions to the problems of working class could not be solved by traditional politics. In spring of 1847, they joined a new political society called the League of Just. The movement needed a little manifesto, and since Marx and Engels had played an important role in organizing the Communist League that, together with their academic rigor and passion politics, made them ideal authors. They began working on the text immediately against the backdrop in 1848 revolutions in Europe. While liberals throughout the continent were rising up against the absolute monarchies to create constitutions, parliaments, and democracy, Marx and Engels aimed at an entirely more radical agenda. In the Communist Manifesto, they described all history as a result of class struggle between aristocracy, the bourgeoisie, and proletariat. They advocated the revolutionary approach to overthrow the owners, which means the production, who exploited the working classes, and addressed their appeal to workers worldwide. Manifesto is divided into three sections. The first explanations the historic contents and context and the nature of complementary capitalist society. The second is the most recognizable manifesto. It sets forth its various objects, including a progressive income tax, the public ownership of industry, and free public education. The final section examines the other socialist movements and the time and attempts to why Marx and Engels' communist vision was superior to its competitors. Originally written in German, the work was translated to English by Engels himself in 1888 with the aim of reaching to international audience. Pause there. That means whenever in 1888, that was 7 years before his death, he translated the book. About 40 years later. Imagine that. The Manifesto, along with Marx's other seminal work, That's Capital, inspired revolutionaries across the world, including Lenin, Mao, and Xi Jinping. In the academic world, these writings created a framework analysis that was adopted by hundreds of historians, economics, and sociologists. I'm sorry if I pronounce some things wrong, like from different societies of different languages and culture, because I do not know how to speak those, and so my pronunciation may be off for a couple things. Preface to the German edition of 1872. The Communist League, an international association of workers, which could which could of course be the only secret one under conditions obtaining at the time. Commissioned undersigned at the Congress held up in London, November 1847, to draw up a publication a detailed theoretical and practical program of the party, such as the origin of the following manifesto, manuscript of which traveled to London to be printed a few weeks before February Revolution. First published in German, it has been republished in the language that at least 12 editions in Germany, England, and America. It was published in English for the first time in 1850 in the Red Republican, London. Translated by Miss Helen McLaren, and in 1871 at least 3 different translations in America. A French version first appeared in Paris shortly after the June insurrection of 1848, and recently Le Socialiste of New York. A translation is in the course of preparation. A Polish version appeared in London shortly after it was published in German. A Russian translation was published in Vienna into the 60s, into Danish too. Wow. It was translated shortly after its appearance. However much the state of things may have altered to the last 25 years, the general principles laid down in this manifesto are, on as a whole, as correct as today as ever. Here and there, some detail might be improved. The practical application of principles will depend, as the manifesto itself states, everywhere and all times, on the historical conditions for the time being existed. And, for that reason, no special stress is laid on the revolutionary measures proposed at the end of this section 2. That passage would, in many respects, be very differently worded today. In view of gigantic strides of modern industry in the last 25 years, and the accompanying improved and extended party organizations of workers and classes, in view of practical experience gained, first in February Revolution, and then still more in the Paris Commune, where the Poleria, for the first time, held political power for over 2 months. This program has in some detail been acquaintanced. One thing especially was approved is the Commune, viz. That the working class cannot simply lay hold of the ready-made state machinery and wield it for its own purposes. See the Civil War in France. They had a lot of those. Addressing the General Council of the International Working Men's Association, London, True Love, in 1871, page 15, where this point is further developed. This is page 11. Further, it is self-evident that the criticism of socialist literature is deficient of relation in the present time, because it comes out only 1847. Also, that the remarks on the relation of the communists to the various opposition parties, section 4, although in principle still correct, yet practiced are acquaintanced, because political situation has been entirely changed and the progress of history has swept from off the earth in greater portion of political parties they enmutred. But then the manifesto has a historical document which we have no longer any right to alter. A subsequent edition may perhaps appear in the introduction, bridging the gap from 1847 to the present day. This reprint was too unexpected to have time for this. Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, London 24th, January 1872. That was the first chapter. Next chapter is called Preface to the English Edition of 1888.